Okay, I want you to do something for me. Just for a moment, imagine you're actually there. The year is 1944. It's late May, you're a German soldier, and you're standing on a 100-foot-high cliff in Normandy, France, staring out at the English Channel. You've got concrete bunkers all around you, nests of machine guns, some of the biggest, baddest artillery on the whole coast. And you feel completely 100% safe. Why? Well, because for any enemy to get to you, they'd have to climb a sheer vertical wall of rock, while you and your buddies rain down hellfire on them from above. It's not just unlikely, it's a mathematical impossibility. Let's get into this. This is the story of Pointe du Hoc. And listen, this wasn't just some battlefield bravado, you know? This was a core belief. It was a certainty that was literally built into the foundations of their defense. The German engineers, they'd done the math. They'd calculated the angles, measured the height, mapped out the fields of fire. And every single time, the answer was exactly the same. Trying to attack this place from the sea would be nothing less than suicide. You've got to understand, Pointe du Hoc wasn't just another defensive point on a map. It was the linchpin. It was the absolute heart of the German Atlantic Wall in this whole sector. Think about those 6 huge guns. We're talking about cannons that could throw a nearly 100-pound shell over 12 miles. They could hit the invasion fleet out at sea. They could shatter landing craft before they even touched the sand. They could rake across both Omaha and Utah beaches, turning them into absolute killing fields. The entire D-Day invasion, its success or its failure, could very well hinge on this one single fortified piece of rock. And hey, if you had any doubt at all about how certain the Germans were, just listen to these words. They don't come from just anybody. They come from the Desert Fox himself, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel. Maybe one of the most brilliant military minds of the entire war. He went to Pointe du Hoc. He saw it with his own eyes. And he wrote in his diary the very same conclusion. Tactically impossible. When a guy like Rommel says something is impossible, you tend to believe him. So this is where we get a collision course. It's like 2 freight trains heading for each other. On one track, you have German certainty, right? Built on the cold, hard logic of physics and military science. And on the other track, you have Allied necessity. It's just a brutal, simple fact. For the thousands and thousands of young men about to storm those beaches to have any chance of survival, those guns had to be silenced. It wasn't an option, it wasn't a nice to have, it was everything. The impossible, it had to become possible. Well, that was the exact question keeping Allied commanders like General Omar Bradley up at night. They tried bombing the place, but the bombs just bounced off the thick concrete bunkers. A conventional land attack? Way too slow, way too risky. Every logical textbook option was completely off the table. So what's left? What do? You do the one thing. The only thing. The thing the enemy is absolutely positively certain you will never ever do. You try the impossible. Bradley's plan was, well, it was nuts. It was audacious. It broke every rule in the book. He proposed sending a small group of elite soldiers to land on the tiny little sliver of beach at the bottom of the cliffs and just climb straight up. Now, you have to realize this plan was met with some serious eye-rolling, even among the Allies themselves. This quote from one of the naval planners says it all. I mean, can you just hear the sarcasm? It was seen as a flat-out suicide mission. The general thinking was that even a half-hearted defense could just sweep them off that cliff face. The odds weren't just long. They were basically 0. But then, cutting right through all of that doubt, all the strategic calculations and the skepticism, came this simple, quiet, unwavering response. It was from Lieutenant Colonel James Earl Rudder, the man who would have to lead this impossible mission. He didn't argue about physics or tactics. He just stated a fact. He had something more powerful than calculations. He had total, unconditional faith in his men. You know, when you write it down, the plan looks so simple, almost elegant. 4 easy steps. But I want you to pause and really, really think about step 3. Climb 100 feet of rope under enemy fire. That means you are hanging there on a wet, slippery rope with 60 pounds of gear pulling you down while 200 men at the top are shooting machine guns straight down at you and dropping grenades on your head. And as if that wasn't bad enough, the mission went wrong before a single ranger even got his boots wet. There was a catastrophic navigation mistake. The strong currents and the chaos of the sea pushed the landing craft miles off course. That 40 minutes delay, it was a disaster. It meant they missed the cover of darkness. It meant that the huge naval bombardment that was supposed to keep the Germans pinned down was long over. By the time they arrived, the Germans would be recovered, alert, and waiting for them. the impossible mission had just gotten a whole lot harder. At 7:10 a.m., it began, and it was a vertical slaughterhouse. Just try to picture it. You're climbing hand over fist. Your muscles are screaming, and machine gun bullets are literally ripping the air next to your face. The Germans didn't even have to aim. They just fired down the ropes. They dropped grenades. They even started cutting the ropes and prying loose chunks of the cliff to drop on the men below. It was pure hell, just tilted 90 degrees. And yet, somehow, they did it. Just 15 minutes. 15 minutes after the first boat hit that tiny beach, the first U.S. Army Rangers clawed their way over the top of the cliff. They moved faster than the Germans believed was humanly possible. They defied the math. They defied the odds. They did the impossible. They were on top. But any feeling of victory was gone in an instant. As the Rangers fought their way across this moonscape of bomb craters, heading for those huge concrete bunkers, the whole reason for this entire bloody vertical nightmare, they stumbled upon a horrifying, soul-crushing discovery. Nothing. The guns weren't there. In their place, the Rangers found massive wooden poles, just telephone poles painted black to look like giant gun barrels from the air. The entire objective, the whole reason men were dying on the ropes below, it was a trick. It was an illusion. The Germans had moved the real guns somewhere else. You can just feel the air go out of the room with that quote, can't you? The shock, the utter disbelief from Lieutenant Ickner. I mean, try to put yourself in that moment. The adrenaline, the courage, the sacrifice, seeing your friends fall. And for a split second, it must have felt like it was all for absolutely nothing. But this is the moment. This is where the story shifts from being about incredible bravery to being about incredible initiative. The original plan? Obsolete. The physical objective? Gone. But the real mission, making sure those guns couldn't fire on the beaches, that mission was still very much alive. It just transformed. So here's the crucial moment. In the middle of all that chaos, with no new orders coming, two Rangers, First Sergeant Leonard Lamel and Staff Sergeant Jack Kuhn, they just noticed something. Faint, heavy tracks in the dirt, leading away from the fortified positions and inland. And on pure battlefield instinct, with nothing else to go on, they decided to follow them. And it turns out they were carrying the perfect tool for a job they didn't even know they had yet: thermite grenades. Now, these don't explode with a big bang. They burn. They burn with this unbelievable heat. We're talking over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot enough to literally melt the steel firing mechanisms of a cannon into one solid, useless lump of metal. And here it is, the payoff for that incredible instinct. About a quarter-mile down a little country lane, hidden away in an apple orchard, Lommel and Kuhn found them. 5 of the 6 massive 155mm guns, perfectly camouflaged, being prepped to open fire on Utah Beach. And while a group of nearly 100 German soldiers stood just yards away, totally oblivious, these 2 men slipped in and, one by one, destroyed the firing mechanisms on every single gun. In less than 10 minutes, just 2 guys had single-handedly accomplished the primary objective for the entire assault on Pointe du Hoc. But their story, their ordeal, it was far from over. I want you to remember this number: 225. That's how many Rangers from 3 different companies hit the beach at the base of that cliff on the morning of June 6th. And this is the number of those men who were still able to stand and fight when relief finally broke through to them 2 days later: 90. After taking the cliffs, they were cut off, completely surrounded, and they had to fight off wave after wave of furious German counterattacks to hold their ground. Just take a second and look at this chart. From 225 down to 90. That's a casualty rate of over 60%. More than 6 out of every 10 men who started that mission were either killed or wounded. That was the staggering, almost unbelievable price of doing the impossible. So what do you learn from paying a price that high? I think First Sergeant Lommel, one of the 2 men who actually found and destroyed the guns, he summed it up perfectly. The Germans' biggest weakness wasn't a crack in their concrete or a gap in their barbed wire. It was a failure of imagination. Their absolute certainty that the cliffs were impossible to climb blinded them. They just couldn't conceive that anyone would be brave enough or maybe crazy enough to even try it. The Rangers didn't just climb a cliff. They redefined the very meaning of the word impossible. You know, the story of Pointe du Hoc, it's so much more than just a famous battle. It's this incredible blueprint, a testament to the idea that sometimes the biggest obstacles we face aren't the physical walls in front of us, but the mental walls, the assumptions we make about what can and cannot be done. And that leaves us with a question that echoes way beyond some battlefield in France. So think about it for a second. What's the impossible cliff in your life? The next time someone tells you something can't be done, is it really, truly impossible? Or does it just require a little more courage and a whole lot more determination than anyone expects?